Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Evelyn and this is Here There Be Magic, where we talk about the magic of all things storytelling. Today I'm going to be taking you through some of my most anticipated sci-fi and fantasy releases for the second half of 2022. Now, I make 4 of these videos a year, and 2 of them were released back in January, outlining my most anticipated releases for the first half of the year, so January through June. And this week and next week, I'm sharing releases for July through December. So stay tuned next week for contemporary releases, but right now, we're talking about all things speculative. And I am so excited to share all of these titles with you. So excited to read them, get my hands on them as soon as possible. But first I have a honorable mention for a book that was on this list but got removed because I have an arc. And that is The Drowned Woods by Emily Lloyd-Jones, which is set to release on August 16th. This book is set in the same universe as Emily Lloyd-Jones' The Bone Houses, which is one of my favorite standalone fantasies of all time. Except I always thought it was really unfortunate that it was a standalone because I love the world so much. It's based around like Welsh folklore mythology and it was so like vast and had so much depth, and I just wanted to learn so much more about the world itself. It seemed like there was a lot of potential there, the way that she set it up, which worked great for the standalone because I think the best fantasy worlds are ones where you can tell that there's more outside of the characters, right? Obviously world building 101. But of course, I am so glad that The Drowned Woods is also going to be set in this universe. It follows a girl named Mare who is a water diviner, and she's being used by this evil prince to seek out the wells of his enemies, and he's been poisoning them behind her back. And when she finds out, she runs off and then is contacted by her former handler who has a plan to take down the prince. But the best part of all of this is that there's a corgi in it. And don't worry, I have it on good authority from the author that nothing bad happens to this dog. But y'all, if you know me in real life, you know how much I adore corgis. He's gonna be my fluffy little friend. Ah! So yeah, like I said, this book releases on August 16th. Make sure to go pre-order it, library request it, do whatever it is that you do to make sure that you get your hands on anticipated reads as quickly as possible. And then go ahead and do that for all of the books that I'm about to tell you about, starting with Youngbloods by Sasha Laurens. So, Youngblood by Sasha Laurens is set to release on July 19th from Razorbill. In a world where vampires must survive by drinking hema, an expensive artificial blood substitute, Kat and her mother are barely making ends meet living amongst humans. When Kat learns that she's been accepted into the prestigious vampires-only hardcore prep school, she thinks that their luck is about to change. Except her new roommate, Taylor, is actually an old friend, and things did not end super well between the two of them. But when Taylor discovers the body of a dead vampire and Kat begins to uncover secrets hidden in the school's archives, the two have to team up to put together the pieces of a conspiracy at the very heart of vampiredom. This is a sapphic vampire dark academia, which I am super excited for because for the first time in my life, I'm actually really into vampires right now because I've been watching First Kill on Netflix. I've never really been a vampire person. I didn't get into Twilight when it was big. I never watched Vampire Diaries. I can't even think of a third piece of vampire media other than Dracula to like mention in this list of vampire media that I was never interested in. But, as we learned in last week's video, things that are not my jam very quickly become my jam when there's lesbians involved. And for some reason, 2022 is just the year of lesbian vampires. And honestly, I'm very here for it. Cannot wait to pick this book up when it releases next month. Next we have Violet Made of Thorns by Gina Chen, which is set to release on July 26th from Del Corte Press. Violet has been using her role within the royal court to manipulate things with not totally true divinations. But when the king asks for a false prophecy regarding Crown Prince Cyrus's love story, she accidentally awakens a real curse that ties the fate of the kingdom to his choice of a bride. Violet knows Cyrus has been planning to strip her of her role as soon as he comes into power, so this would be the perfect time for a power play of her own, as long as she doesn't get distracted by her growing attraction toward him. So first of all, this cover with these pretty little yellow roses, gorgeous, and was what drew my eye to this book in the first place. And I'm so glad it did, because ever since I finished Margaret Owen's Little Thieves, I have been craving another magical court intrigue book with a completely untrustworthy main character. And I can't think of that many YA stories with a character that has, like, divination powers. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I at least haven't read that many, and it seems like such a cool opportunity for mischief. I'm really excited. Next we have My Imaginary Mary by Cynthia Hand, Brodi Ashton, and Jodi Meadows. Mary Shelley is searching for the perfect idea. It's not Mary Shelley though, is it? Because she's not married to Percy. Hold on. Mary, I can only assume Wollstonecraft Godwin, is searching for the perfect idea to inspire a work that'll live up to the memory of her brilliant mother and impress her secret beau, Percy Shelley. Ada Lovelace, ingenious mechanical engineer, might just have that perfect idea. Practical Automaton #1, aka Pan, will change the world if she can figure out how to make him completely autonomous. Or even work. When Mary and Ada learn that they are fae, with the magical ability to turn their dreams into reality, they team up to bring Pan to life, and themselves under the scrutiny of a very obsessive mad scientist. So, some of y'all had to be expecting this book to be on the list, right? Like, we all know that the Lady Janies have me in an absolute chokehold. So, for those of you who don't know, this book is the second book in a series about historical Marys. That's a spin-off of a series that they did about historical Janes. And what I think is interesting is that they follow a pattern, which is European monarchy, famous British author, American folk hero. American folk person? I don't know if you would call Typhoid Mary a hero, but that's what's coming up next. So we've reached the famous British author phase of this series, and of course, because they're the Lady Janies, they had to throw in a fun new magical system in there. And I'm so excited by the fact that they're including Ada Lovelace, because the two women did have a lot in common in terms of, like, their backgrounds, both having, like, really iconic parents and, like, struggling to make a name for themselves, and then also, like, men taking credit for the things that yeah, it's a whole thing, like, it makes sense. Also, what I'm really excited about is these books usually have 2 female point of view characters and 1 male point of view character, and when this book was announced but we didn't know a lot about it, I was afraid that the male point of view character was going to be like Percy Shelley or one of his asshole friends. But no, it's the monster, quote unquote. It's just gonna be so uniquely wild and unexpected the way that all of these books are, and I live for that very specific brand of awesome. Next we have Blood Like Fate by Liselle Sambury, which is set to release on August 9th from Margaret K. McElderry Books. This is the second book, and so I am not going to give you a full summary because I don't want to spoil Blood Like Magic, which is one of the coolest fantasy debuts I've ever read. I will say though that I absolutely fell in love with the world of this story. It blends elements of sci-fi and fantasy into a near future Toronto where witches coexist with advanced DNA-based technology. The main character, Voya, is part of a family of witches, and her main motivation is protecting that family at all costs. And it's such a great read. You you honestly need to go pick it up right now in time to read it before the second book releases, which I cannot wait for because I cannot wait to find out what happens next, y'all. Oh my god. Next we have Ravenfall by Kalyn Josephson, which is set to release on August 30th from Del Corte Press. The Ballanque family has used their psychic powers to run the Ravenfall Inn, a bed and breakfast at the crossroads between the human world and the other world, for generations. But even by Ballanque standards, 13-year-old Annabella's power to foresee death is a little abnormal. When 14-year-old Colin Pierce arrives at the inn searching for his missing brother and the monster that killed their parents, Anna agrees to help him find answers. Together they unearth secrets about his family's past, Colin's own unimaginable power, and the eerie Celtic mythological origins of the monster that is after him. A monster that needs to be stopped by Halloween night, or else it may tear a hole in the veil separating the other world from the human. This is one of the few middle grade books on my list. I don't read a lot of middle grade right now, which I need to get back into because I have middle grade projects that I would love to work on, and I just don't feel like I have the conventions of the age range down anymore, which is super weird because when I started writing, granted I was in middle grade, I wanted to write middle grade, and I did not think I would end up writing as much YA as I have. The reason I'm excited for this one is I love a good portal or portal adjacent fantasy, and one of my favorite takes on that story is focusing on the people that sort of live in the in-between, who have a foot in both worlds. Which I realize is like any portal fantasy, but what I mean is the people for whom both worlds have always been part of life. Not just the Pevensey children who stumbled upon Narnia, but the dude who owns the wardrobe. That's a bad example because I've not actually read all of the Narnia books, but the idea of an inn at the border of worlds is one that always fascinates me. There we go, that's what I'm trying to say. Thank you for your time. Next we have 3 Kisses, 1 Midnight by Roshani, Chokshi, Sandhya, Menon, and Evelyn, Skye, which is set to release on August 3rd. Yes. From Wednesday Books. According to legend, 400 years ago, on the very same Halloween night that the town of Moonridge was founded, a young lady lost her life at the stroke of midnight, leaving behind her true love. Now, every All Hallows Eve, the Lady of Moonridge descends upon the townsfolk, casting an aura upon those willing to follow their heart's desire. This year, best friends Ani, Ash, and True are counting on a love potion to bring them affection, acceptance, and healing. But they're about to learn it'll take more than a spell to help them recognize the magic of love. This one has been on my radar for a while because I used to be a member of Sandhya Menon's street team, and she is just one of the most lovely authors I've ever had the pleasure of interacting with, so any one of her projects is auto support for me, and this one in particular is super exciting because I love holiday romances so much, and Halloween, in my opinion, is the most dramatic of the holidays, and so there's a lot of untapped potential for romance there, I think. Next we have The Sunbearer Trials by Aiden Thomas, which is set to release on September 6th from Fuel and Friends. At the beginning of each decade, the sun's power must be replenished in order for Sol to travel along the sky. Sol selects 10 semidioses to compete in the Sunbearer Trials, the loser of which will be sacrificed to Sol and used to fuel the sunstones that protect the people of Reino del Sol from the evil obsidian gods. Teo, the son of Quetzal, goddess of birds, knows he won't be selected. Sol doesn't pick Jade Semidios for the trials. He is worried about his best friend, Naya, daughter of Tierra, god of the earth, and, albeit reluctantly, his friend-turned-rival Aurelio, both powerful gold semidioses. But for the first time in over a century, Sol selects not just 1, but 2 Jade semidioses. Zio, the 13-year-old child of Mala Suerte, god of bad luck, and Teo. That description was so difficult to write because the original description of this book has so much world building language built in because Aiden Thomas wrote his own freaking pantheon of new gods for this book, which is amazing, and I'm so excited to hop into this world. But also, oh my gosh. But seriously, as a former Percy Jackson kid, current Percy Jackson adult, and Aiden Thomas stan, I am so here for all of this energy. I cannot wait to learn all of the lore. It's going to be amazing. It's gonna scratch the little itch in my brain. Something that's exciting for me is that this fantasy pantheon is specifically inspired by Mexican culture and folklore, which is my family's culture and folklore, and I love opportunities to delve deeper into that. Even though I know, disclaimer, this is not an accurate representation of actual Mexican culture and folklore. This is a fantasy interpretation that takes inspiration from elements of those things. It's a very important distinction when it comes to fantasy. I'm still super freaking excited. Also, personal braggy bonus here. I know so much more Spanish now than I did when I first read Cemetery Boys. I'm gonna understand so many more things. Next we have The Gingerbread Witch by Alexandra Overy, which is set to release on September 13th from Inkyard. Maud grew up in a magical cottage made of gingerbread with sweets like chocolate mousse squirrels and sugar mice to keep her company. She dreams of being a witch, like Mother Agatha, but after returning from a big fight that they had, she discovers that witch hunters, Hansel and Gretel, have shoved Agatha into the cottage's oven. Now, Maud's only hope of saving herself and the other gingerbread creations is to travel through the dangerous forest of the Shadelands with witch hunters at her heels to find the first witch's spellbook. So this is the second middle grade on this list. It's also the first Alexandra Overy on this list. I loved Alexandra's YA debut, These Feathered Flames, which we will talk about more in a little bit. And I have a lot of faith in her as a purveyor of retellings, especially retellings that you really don't see that much of, like Hansel and Gretel. I am always excited to step into a fairy tale inspired world, and I'm so excited to see what this one has in store for me. Next we have How to Succeed in Witchcraft from Aislinn Brophy, which is set to release on September 27th from Putnam. Determined to impress Mr. B, drama teacher and head of the selection committee, Shay agrees to star in his questionably diverse musical opposite Anna. As rehearsals begin, Shay finds herself receiving unpleasant, unwanted attention from Mr. B, and surprisingly, Anna, who might not be the despicable witch Shay always thought she was, is the one person in her corner. I've been on a huge contemporary fantasy kick recently, and this book seems like it fits exactly into the niche of stories that I've been wanting to read, where there's magic inherently worked into the world, but the problems that the characters are facing are very real world problems. I'm very much looking forward to reading about some powerful ass witches taking down a nasty ass man. Next we have If You Could See the Sun by Ann Liang, which is set to release on October 11th from Inkyard. As the only scholarship student at her elite international school in Beijing, Alice Sun has always felt invisible. But now she's actually literally turning invisible, so she hatches a plan to monetize this mysterious new power by uncovering scandalous secrets for her classmates. Another thing that I've been getting into recently, boarding school books. I'm really excited about this one. The cover looks gorgeous. I have heard nothing but good things about it. And I am so ready for that sweet, sweet moral crisis that comes with developing superpowers. Next we have The Ones We Burn by Rebecca Mix, which is set to release on November 1st from Margaret K. McElderry Books. Miranka may be a blood witch whose magic compels her to kill, but she is tired of death. All she wants to do is live out the rest of her days with the coven that raised her, trying to forget about her past. Instead, she's named Bloodwind, the treaty bride to the human kingdom of Aislinn, and directed to kill the crown prince. Except the kind, gentle prince is no threat at all. It's his wickedly smart sister, Princess Aramis, who actually poses more of a threat to Ranka. But when a mysterious magical plague begins killing witches, Aramis offers to help Ranka contain her deadly magic if she helps develop a cure. Would I be part of the YA Bookternet if I weren't excited to read this book? This cover is my favorite cover in this video. I gasped out loud when I saw it because it is so gorgeous. You know when you find out about a book's premise and your immediate thought was like, oh no, I'm going to ship this too hard. That is how I feel about this book. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to get overly invested in the relationship between the murdery blood witch and the cool science princess. Like, that's... Next we have The Do-Over by Lynn Painter, which is set to release on November 15th from Simon Pulse. Emily Hornbury just had the worst Valentine's Day ever. But even though she passed out on her grandmother's couch with a pint of Ben & Jerry's, she wakes up back in her own bed and discovers it's Valentine's Day all over again. That's right, she's stuck in some sort of time loop, reliving the nightmare of discovering her boyfriend cheating on her V-Day after V-Day after V-Day. Another thing she can't seem to avoid? Running into the enigmatic Nick in a variety of unfortunate ways. But when good things start to come out of reliving her life going up in flames, what happens when the do-overs stop? It's a time loop story. I love a good time loop story. We've already established I love a good holiday romance. It's recommended for fans of A Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow. What more could you ask for? Next we have A Consuming Fire by Laura E. Weymouth, which is set to release on November 22nd from Margaret K. McElderry Books. Every 18 years, the forest village of Weatherall sends one girl to the god of the mountain to give a sacrifice. The girls are supposed to return home safely, but Anya's twin sister didn't. When Anya volunteers to make her own journey up the mountain, it's not to make a sacrifice to the god. She plans to kill the god, so no girl ever has to journey up the mountain again. So Laura E. Weymouth is one of my favorite fantasy authors right now, and I need y'all to get on the Laura E. Weymouth train with me because she is consistently putting out these books with amazing concepts. Nobody does atmosphere like her, and I love her angry girls. Her teenage girl characters are allowed to be messy, and it's amazing, and I cannot wait to meet Anya, who seems like she has the potential to be the angriest of all. So ready for it. Next we have At Midnight, edited by Dahlia Adler, which is set to release on November 22nd. This is a similar concept to some of the other anthologies Dahlia Adler has edited, one about Shakespeare, one about Edgar Allan Poe. This one is all about fairy tales, which you know is where I thrive. Some of my favorite authors and some of my favorite fairy tales are going to be featured. I'm super excited to read Dahlia's take on Rumpelstiltskin. The Nightingale is included here. I can't wait to see what Tracy Deonn does with that, and I am beyond excited for an Anna Marie McLemore take on The Nutcracker. Plus we're getting a brand new original fairy tale from Melissa Albert, who I love, and so all in all I'm just so excited to pick this one up. I just really love fairy tales, you guys. Oh my gosh. So yeah, this is like my dream anthology. I would also like to request like 20 more in this vein. Thank you very much. And last but certainly not least, This Cursed Crown by Alexandra Overy, which is set to release on December 6th from Inkyard. Once again, this one's a sequel, so I can't really tell you that much about the plot for risk of spoiling the first book, These Feathered Flames. This is a retelling of The Firebird, a story that comes from Slavic folklore. In this book we follow twin sisters, one of whom is destined to become the ruler of the kingdom, the other destined to become the Firebird, who is in charge of keeping magic balanced within the world. And despite that, magic is slowly disappearing, mistrust is being sowed, and when their mother dies, both of them are forced into their roles before they're ready, and they have to deal with the intrigue of the court and also the mysterious circumstances behind their mother's death. That book ended with one of the biggest cliffhangers of 2021. I have been at the edge of my seat waiting for the sequel this entire time. And don't worry, you have plenty of time to pick it up before the sequel releases and then suffer in the way that I have. Suffering is so worth it though, right? Alright, there you have it, the sci-fi and fantasy titles releasing in the second half of 2022 that I absolutely cannot wait to pick up. If you like this video, remember to give it a big thumbs up and stay tuned for next week's video when I'll be talking about contemporary releases. As always, remember to pre-order, library request, do something to get your hands on these books and support the authors Pre-order sales are so important for first week sales and making sure that these authors can continue to publish stories that we love. I have put links in the description of this video to where you can pre-order all of the books. If the author has a pre-order campaign, I have included that as well. If you can get signed copies from a specific indie, I've included the link to that. So go ahead and go on a little shopping spree in the description of this video. I very much encourage it. With that being said, my name is Evelyn. I make new videos every Magical Monday, and I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye!